Talk about a Git configuration called compatobjectformat. If I look at this Git documentation on the hash function transition, we see they have a transition plan. And it starts off with this configuration called compatobjectformat or compatible object format. And basically what this is when you initialize a Git repository that's SHA-256, you can specify a compatible SHA algorithm. In this case, it would be SHA-1. So I'm going to make a local and then a remote Git repository here and just explain exactly where Git is at regarding this compatible object format. So I'm going to say git init, and I will give it the flag object format and give it the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. And I'm going to call this one local SHA-256. Then I'm going to say git init var, and I'm just going to call it remote SHA-1. So let me go into local SHA-256, and now I need to specify another Git configuration here. And I can do that by just saying git config, and I'll give it the extensions section there, and the name of it is compatobjectformat. And I'm going to say that's going to be SHA-1. So let me cat the .git/config file here. We see a few things. First of all, we see that the repository format version is 1. It has to be 1. It can't be 0. Our object format is SHA-256. That means all of our commits, all of our blobs, our trees, everything are going to be hashed using the 256 algorithm. It's going to output a 64-character digest instead of the 40-character digest. But then we've also specified the compat object format being SHA-1. And that's going to do something here. So let me just touch a file here. I'll call it hello. I'll echo some text into it. Let me add that and commit it. Okay, great. So let me see git log, and we see our 64-character digest there. That's because we're using the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. But if I go into my .git directory here and I go into objects, I can see the content addressable file system here. These are the first 2 characters of the digest here, and if you go in here, you'd see the compressed files here. But this file here, looseobject.idx, the loose object index, was created because I have the compat object format configuration set. If I didn't set that compat object format config, I would not have this file. If I look at it, it's a mapping between the SHA-256 digests, and over on the right, after the space character, is the SHA-1 hash digests. So this is part of the transition plan of Git moving from SHA-1 to SHA-256. And something else that you can do is I can use this git revision parse, and I can see the last commit, the last digest for my last commit. And I can specify an option here, and I can say output object format equals SHA-1. And I can see the SHA-1 equivalent. So the way Git knew how to give me the SHA-1 equivalent was using that loose object index file with the mapping between the 256 and the 1 hashing algorithms. Now, this is as far basically as the Git source code has gotten. So now I'm going to go back into that remote. So let me go into the remote and let me cat the config file. And we see that the format version is 0. If I go back and I go into my local, I can set the remote. So let me say git remote add origin. We'll go back a directory and we'll say remote 1. If I say git push u origin main, I'm going to get an error, and it says the receiving end does not support this repository's hash algorithm. And if I look at this transition plan over here, we saw a couple of these things already. Starts off by saying the first user visible change, the introduction of this extension. So we saw that. Next comes introduction of the compatible format. Implementing the loose object index, we saw that. We can translate object names, we saw that a little bit. The output format option, we saw that. The next step is supporting fetches and pushes to SHA-1 repositories. Allow pushes to a repository using the compat format. And so we would expect in the future, since we are SHA-1 compatible, to be able to push to a SHA-1 repository. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten there quite yet. At the time I'm recording this video, this is basically as far as you can go. And so if you want to interact with the remote repository, you would need to start that remote repository on SHA-256. And so just to show that real quick, we can go into the remote and we can, we'll just manually do this, I think. We'll go into config. I'm going to change this to a 1. I'm going to add the extensions section here. Extensions, okay, and I'm going to say object format SHA-256, and let me go back into my local, and let's try that command again. And it worked. And so at this point, we need the remote and the local to match, but hopefully one day in the future with this compat object format config, you'll be able to interact between SHA-256 and SHA-1, and it'll just be trivial. So that development work hopefully is on its way, but this at least explains how to use this configuration starting now.